The mere existence of a fund of knowledge is not enough, unless knowledge is nurtured and nourished by devoted teachers and eager students alike. It will, like a pool of water following the rains, change its hue and slowly disappear. It gives us great satisfaction today, at the end of the academic year, to observe the number of students who have successfully passed this university's requirements and who are assembled here today to take part in this commencement ceremony. This is a rewarding and long-awaited occasion for each of you, as it is for us personally, and we congratulate each one who will today receive his diploma from our hands. Although you have reached this high landmark in your academic training, your education is not complete. There is no end to learning. During your years of study, we hope that you have come to understand and appreciate the significance and the importance of education, educational institutions, and of this university in particular. We hope that you have come to realize what this university is today, what its role in the life of the nation is in 1966, and what its potential is for the future. For us, the importance of this university, indeed, of any institution of higher education, is fourfold. First, it provides the institutional framework wherein ancient and tested and proven knowledge can be passed on to the present and future generations. Lacking such a framework, neither a country nor an educational system can bequeath and transmit profound knowledge to posterity. In this same fashion, the existence of GEEZ and Amharic have enabled Ethiopia to preserve and pass to later generations the civilization and culture of her ancient people. Second is the discovery and development of new knowledge through research. A university which does not expand the frontiers of learning through research can only be short-lived. Third is the discharge of the obligation to teach others, which the very creation of such an institution implies and embodies. This is its supreme function. The creation of the institutional framework alone does not guarantee that teaching will be effective, nor does the growth of learning within the university's walls by itself ensure that knowledge will be spread and diffused. The mere existence of a fund of knowledge is not enough, unless knowledge is nurtured and nourished by devoted teachers and eager students alike. It will, like a pool of water following the rains, change its hue and slowly disappear. Practical aspect emphasized. And since a university is established and maintained through the will and support of a people and a government, we may consider, lastly, the use to be made of the knowledge which it has acquired or developed and which it is now transmitting to others. Clearly, this knowledge must be devoted to the ultimate fulfillment of the needs and desires of those to whom the university owes its being. A university which is unconcerned with the practical impact of the work on the people and the nation, which limits its horizons to the theoretical and the abstract and its activities to the library and the laboratory, cannot long expect to enjoy the support of the people and the nation. It is our most earnest wish that this university meet all of these requirements so that the full force of the promise which it holds out to the future of our beloved country may be well and gloriously realized. You graduates who have had, through your year of service to the nation, the opportunity to see at first hand the impact of your education upon your country and to observe at first hand the nation's needs, are in a better position to understand and evaluate the extent to which this is today being accomplished. This is the essential purpose of the National Service Program, the development within each one of you of the inner sense of service to the nation. Only through dedication and sacrifice can one truly help and benefit his country. Although the pressure imposed by the need for training more teachers is still felt, we note with great satisfaction that the number of Ethiopian teachers has increased in the 5 years of the university's existence. In order to attain self-sufficiency, we must give priority to overcoming this shortage. We cannot depend always on others. The disciple is not above his master. We urge you, the teachers, who have a close acquaintance with the conditions of your country, to use your education for conducting valuable research directed towards the alleviation of the problems of your country. Teach, learn, and thereby extend increasingly the frontiers of your knowledge. Some of you graduates of the class of 1966 were unable to pursue full-time university education. Despite this, you devoted your spare time to your studies, determined that this should not constitute a serious impediment in your work. You have been found worthy, and you, in particular, deserve congratulations. Ranks must be filled. Today, our eyes and our hopes are on all you graduates. We hope that the seeds of learning which you have received will, in the service which you render, ripen into an abundant harvest. We assume the obligation to foster and expand education in our nation both as a solemn duty, because the nation can flourish and grow only as the ranks of the teachers and students are expanded and filled, as a matter of free will, because man would prefer to speak of his nation in terms of its educated men and women rather than by recounting the size of its population. Those of you who have not yet completed your studies look forward with hopes and impatience to the day when you, too, will attain this honor. To you we give the message of St. Paul, who looks back, having once put his hand to the plow. These words remind us as well of the need for more universities, for more teachers, more schools, more students, and more work. They commit us ever more fully to the search for the outer limits of the frontiers of learning. Until these have been achieved, no one can enjoy peace of mind. Dynamism, coupled with a conscientious concern for the well-being of the nation, are the necessary qualities of the youthful mind. You have had a better educational opportunity than many. Evaluate your ideas, separate the good in them from the bad. Your hands once put to the plow, do not look back. Education molds human elements in man. It develops him from adolescence to manhood. Let usefulness be your hallmark today, not adolescence. Once again, we congratulate you all, and we thank Almighty God that you have proved yourself deserving of this occasion. June 30, 1966. Special Education. In line with Ethiopia's will towards modernization, in a world and era of specialization, the nation's educational plan had to include training in the various areas of science and technology. What has been done and accomplished in this field, the institutions established and the nation's expectations are mirrored under this caption. Imperial Guard Cadet Training School. We have reminded you repeatedly in the past that bravery is the natural characteristic of the Ethiopian people, which they need borrow from nowhere, and that the possession by Ethiopian people of such a sterling quality is widely known. The fact that we have already explained to you our consideration about you makes it unnecessary to dwell on it at length today. The harmonious blending of military training with inherent valor not only spares vain bloodshed but also assures victory without undue effort. A few well-disciplined and trained troops, history bears witness, can win a battle against an outnumbering force, even 10 times larger. History records that military science enabled Alexander the Great to conquer a large part of the world, often engaging his 30,000 soldiers against the adversary's 600,000. Education and training, as in every walk of life, offers limitless benefits in the military field as well. Born to struggle in this world, man gradually realizes the miracles of light and harnesses this knowledge to be his first instrument of defense against the trials of life, never thereafter preferring to travel in darkness. You boys, to whom we have handed the powerful weapon of light, must exert your utmost to carry the torch of light, sternly refusing to be returned to darkness. The results of your training, which have been demonstrated just now, are a matter of pride for your emperor and a source of strength to your country. Whenever we witness such progressive achievement, we feel extremely happy, looking forward to the dawn of the day that will usher in the fulfillment of our plan for our people's well-being. There is no person in this world who is free from life's responsibility. This responsibility enjoins one to discharge the duty towards the country, serving and dying for it. No one, whether he is a soldier or a civilian, can afford to be a coward and can escape this responsibility. Fortunately, there is no need at present for the employment of our armed forces, either here in our territory or abroad. But when your services are called for, the military force warfare to now will be a guarantee for liberty and independence. May God help you to fulfill the pledge you have given to your emperor and to your country. We view with satisfaction the services of the commander of the Imperial Bodyguard, Brigadier General Mulugeta Bully, in efficiently carrying out our directives, and of the instructors for their devotion to the task of training. May 25, 1950. Ethiopian students abroad. North America. I am very happy to be able to send a few words of greeting to you on the occasion of this reunion of the Ethiopian students who are studying in America. It is good that it has been possible to arrange such a meeting so that you may relax and enjoy yourselves together for a time. We hope that it will also be a period for renewing friendships with your fellow countrymen and thus strengthening the ties which bind you to your homeland, Ethiopia. It should also be a time when you may take stock of yourself and may consider what return you owe for the opportunity you have been given. Great and wise men from all countries have told us through the centuries that the most worthwhile sort of life is one of service, working for the benefit of others. The divine teacher by word and example taught us that the only worthy way of living is to give rather than to receive. In the dark days of the occupation, our own patriots did not consider personal advantages as they strove to realize their ideal. As you prepare yourselves to return to Ethiopia, I commend to you a life which gives to others who are less privileged than we and who have not had our opportunities. Each of you is old enough and mature enough to know that in the United States and Canada education has seldom been prized only on account of its usefulness to individuals but to society. It is seldom intended to be merely an ornament to the person who obtains it. This conception of education is equally important for us in Ethiopia, where only education can lead the way to higher standards of living for all people. It is in expectation of a rich return that the Ethiopian government has spent freely to send you abroad, hoping that upon your return you will make a generous contribution to the betterment of your country. We do not want you to return to Ethiopia, Americans, or Canadians. American techniques in their entirety may be good only in America, and Canadian training will be especially applicable to conditions in that country. We hope that you will be wise in choosing those elements from foreign education which are applicable to conditions in Ethiopia and which can be used in our own country. There is a third thought which I would like you to keep always before you. In a world which becomes smaller and smaller as communication improves, nations must live as neighbors with other nations. Just as your impressions of an American are formed from the individual Americans you meet, so a foreigner's ideas about Ethiopia depend upon the Ethiopians he encounters and knows. Each of you is an ambassador at large of your country. If you are kind and tolerant and courteous, you make people think well of us. If you are arrogant and proud and unfriendly, you discredit us in the eyes of others. It is my earnest hope that you may be at all times worthy representatives of Ethiopia. September 2, 1950. Ethiopian students abroad. United Kingdom. We are happy to send our Christmas greetings to the holiday reunion of Ethiopian students in Great Britain. They reach you at a time when our efforts for the reunion of Eritrea to the motherland have been crowned with success, and access to the sea has been opened to Ethiopia. Since the larger the number of a people, the less they are vulnerable to aggression, we are proud to know that the people of a former province once torn away from the motherland are now restored to us. We well know that you have been brought together during your holidays by reason of the sense of brotherhood and by loyalty and devotion to your own country. You all know that the high privilege of your study abroad has been made possible through our government's policy supported by the individual tax contributions of all our people. In thus making your education possible, the permanent rather than the temporary benefit of our people has been preferred. You will realize that their sacrifice has imposed a high trust upon all of you. As for us, we trust that the idea of repaying the price for the privilege you have been given is in the forefront of your plans for the future. You will be able to fulfill this trust if you apply yourselves faithfully to study and pass with distinction through your higher courses. Thus you will also be able to apply the knowledge you are acquiring in your many schools for the benefit of your country and your people. Wise men have always known the deep and pervading truth that it is better to give than to receive, for even as it conflicts with selfish and ambitious desires, it moderates and controls them. Giving always demands sacrifice. To overcome the temptation of mere daily comfort and to press resolutely and patiently forward on the scheduled way are true tests of the high degree of determination that should bind you together. Any of you, who may wish to profit himself alone from the knowledge given him rather than serve others through the knowledge he has gained from learning, is betraying knowledge and rendering it worthless. A man's happiness is to make his brother happy, and to serve his country. Thus, it is possible to justify for knowledge its high and deserved place. For knowledge is power. If it is not applied properly to create, let there be no doubts, it will destroy. Education has value as it is established in individuals of good character with respect for God. We wish that your destiny shall be embraced in an education firmly based on good character before men and respect before God. The education and knowledge you are acquiring in England will enable you to alleviate the suffering of your country, Ethiopia, if they are enfolded into your minds in harmony with your country's tradition and character. Not for you will be their display as mere personal ornament. You cannot escape the responsibility of your choice. You must be worthy of our hope that you return with the knowledge and devotion to serve our country and ameliorate the life of our people. Even as the impression of another people is formed from the conduct of a single individual, so are you all ambassadors of your country. If you are found to be well-mannered, thoughtful, faithful and industrious, you make others think well of us. But if you become dishonest, arrogant, careless, and indolent, you discredit us and yourself, and your conscience will trouble you throughout the rest of your life. Your country is awaiting the services of her experienced children. Since your desire is to participate in the work which we have planned for the well-being of Ethiopia and for our people's prosperity, in sending you this advice, we pray that the Almighty may help you to attain your loyal and worthy aspirations. January 8, 1951. Officers called to dedication to duty. To be selected as a military officer and as a candidate for promotion is a high privilege. Although evident that war entails death, the death resulting therefrom is designed to preserve the life of others, to preserve the generation and to elevate the history of a nation or people. This history springs from and can be maintained in part through education, which is the basis of one's behavior. For example, there are cases when brilliant soldiers from the ranks are promoted to be officers. This is achieved only through character and devotion to duty. History has reserved special places for such men, who although lacking the formal training of a military academy, yet have led armies and have bravely defended their country. Your formal training together with your obligation ought to prepare you to render even better service in the establishment of peace and security. We are pleased to observe today the skill that you have acquired under the instruction of your own Ethiopian officers. It demonstrates that you have been devoting your time to constructive ends. Today, however, although you have shown us your ability which we admire, do not consider this graduation as an end but as a beginning. Remember that you are always students, for there is much to learn from experience. For the good soldier there are three fundamental principles to be observed: to lead a decent and self-respecting life, to work assiduously, and to be ready at all times to sacrifice himself for his country. When he follows these principles, he would have subjugated his personal self to that of his society, which is much higher. A soldier must at all times watch his behavior, he must be cautious, energetic, and not swayed by rumors. You must, therefore, choose the means by which you can best exercise self-control and self-discipline. In this, you are now possessed with the important weapon of training by which you can defend your country from catastrophe. Through this training you can also elevate your spirit and broaden your mind. If a man has a particular aim, he must work diligently to attain it. It is our intention to ameliorate the living standard of our soldiers because we realize the measure of their sacrifices. A plan of higher and effective training and the procurement of teachers has been formulated and studied, and will be put into effect soon. May 2, 1952. Nurses Training. There is nothing that tends more readily to induce in our heart feelings of joy and solace, than to see the youth of our land growing up and maturing through education, in whatever sphere it may be. All the knowledge to be drawn from the fountainhead of education, not only contributes to the well-being of mankind and to the performance of humanitarian deeds, but is also a veritable pillar upholding the liberty of the land. It is by the strength of the knowledge gained from education that man develops his ideas and brings his labors to success. In choosing for your own sphere the vocation of nursing, the caring for and tending of the sick, you have made a noble choice, for it is one of the truly humanitarian professions. However, it will not always be in hospitals fitted with every convenience that you will carry out this your chosen task. You will have to go to all sorts of places where toil and trouble await you. Your training and your profession make this incumbent upon you. But how great a thing it really is, to be able to help your fellow men, tortured by pain and troubled by disease, to bring rest and relief to body and soul alike. Your own awareness of it may be limited, but the patient who receives your care will surely feel it and appreciate it deeply. This said, it becomes necessary for us to repeat to you today the words of advice which we gave in 1956, to your sister nurses, on the occasion when they similarly received at our hands their certificates of graduation. Your profession calls for discipline, the discipline of study and devotion to obedience and duty, the discipline of self-restraint and cleanliness, and the discipline of lifelong devotion to learning, since knowledge knows no bounds. If you take these fundamental disciplines as your guiding principles, your work will display the highest qualities. You must be nurses not merely in name, but truly in the obligations of that noble calling. We are today laying the foundation stone of a branch, which, subsidized by a joint Ethiopian and Swedish fund, will, in connection with this hospital, care for the health of expectant mothers and infants. We are very much pleased that in addition to its other functions this establishment will provide training for the nursing profession. We trust that the school will prove fruitful in supplying an adequate number of nurses. Our beloved daughter, Princess Sahai Haile Selassie, who was cut off in the flower of her youth, completed her training as a nurse. Following the example of Florence Nightingale, she sought not her own comfort and pleasure, but sacrificed herself in the service of the sick and the suffering. With sincere devotion and compassion, she applied herself to the task of succoring and comforting the sick. You who work or learn in this hospital which bears her name should have her example engraved on your hearts and minds. October 17, 1957. School of Fine Arts. It is these tender feelings of deep and silent admiration evoked from our hearts by the beauties of creation that should find adequate expression in the fine arts. The ancient paintings that are still to be seen in the great monasteries and churches of Ethiopia, and the carvings in wood and stone which have come down to us in the ruins of the ancient palaces, bear witness to the fact that the fine arts had attained a comparatively high degree of development even in very early times. Although the major portion of these works of art was destroyed in the wars that broke out from time to time, those that still remain in Lalibela, Gondar, Shoa, Gajajam and elsewhere fill the competent observer with a sense of wonder and admiration. Since these works of art are also closely related to the history of Ethiopia, the young artists of our country who pursue these fine arts on modern lines can find occasion therein for legitimate pride. We have established this institution because we consider it a matter of great importance to revise and develop the fine arts in our country in a manner which will enable our artists to combine the historical and traditional art of Ethiopia with the advantages of modern technical developments in the field. If Ethiopian paintings and other works of art attain such a standard that they can be sent out of the country and can hold their own amidst exhibits from other countries, they can certainly help in the efforts to make Ethiopia known more widely as a nation fully participating in the spirit and the substance of modern civilization. Our customary support shall always be forthcoming to similar efforts in the fields of music and literature as well. A purely materialistic art would be like a tree which is expected to bear fruit without flowering, and to sacrifice grace and beauty for mere utility. Those who learn here should from the beginning, assiduously avoid the spirit of utilitarianism. Our admiration for the Creator's handiwork should not be limited to those things He has provided us with for our daily needs, but should include all that is good and beautiful. It is these tender feelings of deep and silent admiration evoked from our hearts by the beauties of creation that should find adequate expression in the fine arts. As we have stated time and again, it is easy to begin but hard to finish, and we express on this occasion both our happiness at what we see here today, as well as our strong hope to see this work which is now begun bearing fruit in the near future. July 23, 1958.